I knew the world. Like I think I knew that, mastitis was a thing, prolapse was a thing. I just naively did not think it was going to happen to me.
Hi everyone and welcome back to No Place Like Home. I'm Jess. We're here with Larissa.
Hello.
And Daniela, who I know nothing about except that you're an osteo and you own Continual Wear. So I'm very excited to hear about your story and your experience and your thoughts on the state of postpartum care in Australia. Let's start with a little bit.
Right now, go.
Yeah, okay. Yes, I am Daniela. I can definitely answer that correctly.
And
I am
would
an
you
osteopath.
like to change policy within postpartum?
So I am an osteopath. I've been an osteo now for 20 years, which I know.
That's impressive, especially in this day of everyone being a slashy, you know. We're not a slashy,
slash.
You do a slash cookbook author, slash photographer, slash podcaster, you know. We're all slashies these days. No one has a 20-year career. Yes, so that's really impressive.
Thank you. Yes, so I started uni when I was 17, basically, and it was a 5-year course. Yeah, so I was lucky that I knew very early on that this is what I wanted to do. I loved working with people. And then very early on when I started treating, I was just obsessed with pregnancy and birth and knew that that's where I wanted to be.
What do you think this, was that just something that was within you? You just knew that was a specialisation within?
Because I'm the oldest in my family. It wasn't that I'd had siblings or anyone experience that. I think purely from a scientific, anatomical, physiological point of view, it was just mind-blowing.
Piqued your interest.
Yeah. Like, how does this happen? This is incredible. I just wanted to know more and more. And so there's not actually a specialty in osteopathy. So I just went in with this, trying to get as much experience as I could. So I couldn't actually go back and do any postpartum study. At the moment, though, I'm actually working with Osteopathy Australia to practice. We're actually working through an advanced recognition in pregnancy, so it will happen. Yeah, so we're writing the framework now and doing all of that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so there will be a specialty recognised. It's just going through the process now of getting it done.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's good. Yeah.
I always say it takes a really special person to care about this phase of life before you're in it yourself. So the fact that you got this interest in it before, I'm imagining before you became pregnant yourself, that's really special.
Thank you. No, I know that I look back now though and I cringe those first, because I treated for 10
Don't
years.
We all?
Oh my goodness. I treated for 10 years before I was pregnant, and I think back to some of that advice that I gave patients. I knew I was always safe and I knew what I was doing, but, I'd say to them.
We'll put a question box for all of those patients back then to give all the nuggets of advice.
Some of them I actually do still treat today, which is fantastic, because we have a giggle where I still remember this one patient, I still see her now, and she was coming in pregnant with her second, and she had a 2-year-old at the time, and she was running late to her appointment, and she rang our reception saying, "I'm so sorry, I cannot get my 2-year-old in the car. I'll be there in 10 minutes. And I just remember at the time thinking, naively, how do you not get a 2-year-old in the car? Surely you can get a 2-year-old, not wanting to make any judgment, but at the same time just thinking, how does that not happen? And then fast forward 5 years later, when I was in that scenario and situation where my son was just the surfboard, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening to me. Now I understand exactly. So, I used to tell, the surfboard. So I used to tell patients, go home, don't lift anything, don't put your arms above your head, make sure you're resting. And I think, oh my gosh, they would have just been rolling their eyes thinking,
how?
Yes,
good
exactly.
on you.
So I was passionate before going into it myself, and then learnt so much and gained, thankfully, so much more perspective and understanding and appreciation of what it's like being the mother.
Yeah. So tell us about your motherhood experience.
Sure. So I was married. My husband, Mark, we were married for a couple of years and knew we wanted to have kids early on. And thankfully fertility wasn't a concern. And I was pregnant and found out very early that we actually had a twin pregnancy in our first pregnancy. Oh. Yeah, I was really sick. really sick early on. And I was working at the time with some obstetricians in a specialist centre, and they were just testing my blood for me every couple of days and just seeing these HCG levels and thinking, oh, maybe we'll organise an early scan. So we knew early on there was 2, but it probably was, I think it was the 10-week scan that we went to, and were told that it doesn't look like one twin is growing. And so Mark and I sort of went home and thought, okay, and they said to us, you won't even know. Like your body will actually just come along and absorb the twin. And so, yeah, they call it like a vanishing twin. So we thought, okay, this is not our story and we're just thankful we've got one. And then the next day I hemorrhaged and we thought, oh, that's it for us. Like, and now I rang the doctor and he said, yeah, it sounds like you've probably lost them both. Come in the next day and we'll have a look. And I still felt so sick. And I remember saying to Mike, oh, I still feel pregnant, but I know I'm not. And but I knew that from a health professional point of view too. Like I knew that the HCG levels were still high, but I was still so violently sick and bleeding at the same time. And so we went in and the obstetrician sort of explained everything and he said, let's just do a scan to see. And there was Jack. He was still there beating along. Yeah. So it was sort of a time where we were so thankful and positive and optimistic and but that obviously then I developed a lot of fear and anxiety in the pregnancy.
Yeah,
just even though I knew that they kept telling me that he was fine, everything was fine, I just had that sense of, oh, what if? Yeah. So that was
when you know what that feels like to have that hemorrhage. I imagine anytime. Okay, we talked in another episode about how there's always too much TMI. You're very juicy when you're pregnant, and so anytime there's any amount of discharge coming out of you, you probably would have. I don't know if that happened to you, but I was always like, oh gosh,
go to the bathroom. Yeah,
and it was never blood for me, thankfully. But I imagine if you'd had that, that would just be every time you felt any. Sorry, that might be you. Might want to edit that out. I went there with the TMI.
No, like every time I'd go to the bathroom, I'd have that apprehension of what. Yeah, if there was going to be blood, I did. Yes. So then otherwise I was well. I probably didn't really acknowledge, and this was 13 years ago too, so there wasn't much talk of perinatal anxiety and apprehension at all. Yeah. And I'm, had that feeling so positive and happy that we were still pregnant and we were going to have our baby.
And back then you're just told to be grateful, right?
That's it.
Be grateful.
Yeah. And I think because I am working so closely with pregnant people, you hear so many stories and I empathise and sympathise so much with patients, and I just think, well, at least I've got my baby. And I always come back to that, but I don't think I ever really, at the time acknowledged just how anxious I was. And then it was at 34 weeks where I treated my last patient for the day, and she's pregnant. She was pregnant at the time and I still treat her now. And I just jokingly said to her, I'm on mat leave, I can have my baby now. And I went into labour that day.
Oh my God.
Stop it.
At 34 weeks,
So did you have time to plan?
No.
But no, okay.
You
probably thought you'd do that on mat leave.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was...
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, had an obstetrician appointment that day, and I didn't know I was in labour. I thought it was just Braxton Hicks were kicking in. And I understand like the nervous system, I was just getting to that finish line of quite stressed, needed to get through all the patients I wanted to see before I was on leave, and then I was going to stop. And then I was going to breathe and relax. And I felt like I just exhaled at the end of the day, and the Braxton Hicks just kicked in. Went to the obstetrician and I was just chatting with him, and I just stopped talking. And he said, are you having a contraction? I said, oh, no, they're Braxton Hicks. I can't be in labour. And sent me upstairs, had some monitoring done. And then that next wave of fear of you're having the baby at 34 weeks. And that was So they did everything they could at the time. I had a couple of steroid injections to help with his lungs. I went and we chatted with in the special care nursery. They go and you have a chat with the nurses that are there, and they kindly, showed me what a 34-weeker was going to look like. And so like, okay, this is happening. And my husband then rushed from work to come and meet me as well, because he was still working at the time.
Of course.
So then it was a couple of days though until I went into actual labour.
Okay.
And that was a big shock because I woke up and my waters broke and they said, we need him out now. And he was showing some signs of decels. And so they said, we need to get him out quickly. So as much as I was trying to prepare mentally, emotionally, I was trying to do some pelvic birth prep lying in the hospital bed, but that just wasn't working. I just remember them saying, all right, he needs to come out now. And so then I just didn't really take an active role at all. I was just quite passive in whatever it is they needed to do and lay there and had the oxytocin, and my body went into, like, I laboured an hour and a half, like he was born.
Wow.
Yeah, it was rapid. Yeah. So then I had the wonderful moment of him being born and on my chest, and I think we were prepared for him being blue and had the neonatal specialist in there and all the equipment. That was actually a really wonderful time. I think that looking back now, I was so nervous of what they had prepared us for. So I had that initial connection and it was wonderful, but then they took him away to the special care nursery. So he went off with Mark and I just lay there and I was in total shock, like an hour and a half.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what just happened?
What just happened?
Especially when you've just gotten on mat leave.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, my baby's here, and chatting with my midwife, Antoinette, who again is a patient of mine. So I had a wonderful feeling of connection with her. And I just remember saying, when can I go see Jack? When can I go see him? When can I go see him? And she said, we're just waiting for the afterbirth. I'm like, okay. So I'm just lying there. I'm like, I can't believe he's here. And then the placenta wasn't coming out. And so I went through everything without needing any intervention. And then they had to call the obstetrician back in, and I said, just grab it. Just go in there and grab it.
Yank it out.
He said, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm like, come on, please. He's like, I've got to get an anaesthetist here. You need to have a spinal block.
Oh.
Yeah. So it just kept delaying. And I'm like, can I please go see him? Like, I don't care. Like, I'll leave it in there. Like, let me go. So that took a couple of hours.
That would have been the longest couple of hours of your life.
Yeah, it really was. And then they kept coming back. The nurses were sort of back and forth saying, he's doing great, Mark's doing this. And so I knew he was safe. I was just wanting to be there with him.
Just saying.
Yeah. And so then when I finally did, I had the quickest shower of my life and, quickly ran, put me in a wheelchair and took me to the nursery. And I just still remember seeing Mark with him and just feeling so in love and happy. And then Mark saying, okay, you need to make sure that when we feed him like this and he doesn't like it when you do this, and we've got to make sure that, and I'm like, I don't know my baby. Like it's been, that took a long time.
Oh, honey.
It's all of those, someone else spoke about this as well, didn't they? About those, being told like, it's almost like you need to be scared of your baby, or like you're going to do something wrong to hurt the baby, or
there were rules in place that I didn't know. And I was so thankful that Mark was there caring for him. But at that time I was just like, how do I not know this stuff? So I think that started definitely my wanting to do everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to do every feed, every change. We got officially discharged from the hospital. I think it was day 6 I was discharged. I'd had a uterine prolapse, but I just completely ignored it. It wasn't until later on that became an issue.
Is that because your labour was so rapid?
Yeah. And it was I had a catheter, and when they were trying to get the placenta out, that prolonged, just created that pelvic floor trauma that then resulted in the prolapse. But all I cared about was Jack.
Yeah.
And that was it. We so he had to stay in the nursery, and I said to Mark, we can't come home. We have to stay here with him. And he's like, Dan, there's nowhere for us to sleep. Like he's in the nursery. And I just could not physically leave the hospital. So, and he was fine. He was in good health. He was doing so well. He just wasn't gaining enough weight for us to go home. So there's actually a hotel across the road from where the hospital is, and we only live 15 minutes from the hospital. But I said to Mark, can we stay here? can we just check in that way? Then I'm just across the road.
Yeah.
And that helped me a lot to feel like it felt like it was
As
almost an
close as you could
extension of
be.
the hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm just in another
Down
floor.
a long hallway.
So then, yes, I wanted to do every feed, which is tricky with the preemie because you can only, they told us you can only breastfeed him once a day because he was so little and not gaining enough weight that it was just taking too much energy for him to feed.
Yeah.
So I would feed one feed. It was like the 6 a.m. feed, and that would take about an hour. And then I would give him some expressed, like some EBM that was in the bottle. And then I'd settle him, and then I would either pump the other breast or sterilize everything and then get ready for the next feed, which is 2.5 hours later. So because we had to wake him and stir him to feed, I think I had about 20 minutes in between.
Finishing pumping and everything, and then the next one.
Yeah.
And how long did you do that
I did that for 4 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Was he in the hospital for 4
No.
months?
Sorry, no. I did that feeding cycle for 4 months. We extended it out to about 3 hours during the day back then, and 3 hours overnight. But it was just a long cycle and then I was never meeting his demand. So even when he got to the point that he could feed, because he had a lot more weight on him and energy to feed, I wasn't producing enough for him.
because you hadn't.
So then we were topping up with formula, and then so washing bottles and sterilizing, and then I would pump, and I just never got there, and then had a couple of bouts of mastitis, and
Worst.
I just got to the point where I said to Mike, I don't think I can do this anymore. And Mike said, he wholeheartedly supported me, and even my mum as well, and everyone around me just said, I don't think you can keep doing this. And it was the best thing for him and for me once I did stop breastfeeding.
Yeah, good.
And then I felt it was actually good timing, because by then too I was happy to leave him with my mum for a couple of hours and not be with him all the time. I just didn't have, I suppose it's like for everyone, you don't have that lived experience to feel confident that they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think I still had that. I wanted to know everything
Yeah.
of what was going on.
Yeah.
Had you planned your postpartum?
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
I know. We can talk all about it now, can't we?
Did you have a little bit of an idea of what to expect just from your clients and sort of supporting pregnant and postpartum people?
I did. I knew the world. Like I think I knew that, mastitis was a thing, prolapse was a thing. I just naively did not think it was going to happen to me.
This is the question I wanted to ask earlier, but like given that you went into labour so early.
Yes.
Were you set up at home? Like did you have the cot made and the clothes washed and ready to go?
Yes. No, this is such a good point, because it was the best thing for us was that we were moving in with my parents because our house wasn't ready. Yes. So our house, we will build, everyone does these
Everyone
ridiculous
that's
things.
pregnant.
Starts a business.
Yeah. We were building our house and it was delayed, and Mum and Dad said, just come and stay with us for a couple of months before the baby's due. And it was a blessing because we were at Mum and Dad's. I know. I look back now and I think, so even though I didn't plan for my postpartum to have a doula, have postpartum support, I just fell into it.
Kind of there.
Yeah, it was there. Like I honestly don't know how I would have been able to do it, because we'd have visitors come over, especially in a double Italian family. Jack was the first child born on both sides. Yeah. I think we had 48 people at the hospital. Like it was.
Yeah, same.
Yes.
I had champagne, I had the biscotti, I had the whole thing. I vividly remember that, and I was like swaying because I was like.
From exhaustion.
Yeah.
And just the fog had already set in, the sleep deprivation. I remember swaying and sweating a bit, and I thought, these people need to go. Yeah. But they were all into it.
Oh, yeah, it's a massive celebration.
So they would have, at least I imagine your mum or your dad, someone would have been cooking for you.
Exactly
so
right.
no meal train, but you were
nurtured.
living with your parents, which is, I hope that if my kids have kids one day, if they want to live with me in those first few months of having their baby, even if they're not in the middle of building a house, like I would love that. So how amazing to have that kind of support.
It was just the perfect time, because you're right, I had nothing ready at all. And because he was prem too, I had bought clothes,
Yeah,
but
they
not
would have
preemie
been too
clothes.
big.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So Mum did, she did the shop for me, and Mark was great too, and my in-laws as well were so they got everything that we needed to. Thankfully, we had the cot and the car seat. But yes, emotionally, mentally, there were a lot of things I was going to do in those 6 weeks. But thankfully, being at Mum and Dad's meant that when he was here and we brought him home and the visitors would come over, Mum was the one making the cups of tea and the biscotti. And so I got to focus all of my time and energy on him. And then, when it came to going to go to get petrol in the car, I didn't know how to do that with a newborn baby. So I'd be able to leave him at home with Dad and be able to go and do things like that, because I don't think I would have been able to do it by myself.
There was a question I always had. I had my first baby in Berlin. We didn't have a car. But then when I was here, when I had my second, I was like, what are you meant to do when you feel
I used to have
a
such
car?
anxiety around that.
And then you don't want to leave your baby, but you don't want to get them out. And now they've got an app and you can pay on the app, apparently. I haven't used it. But those little things that make such a big difference.
I used to take the full capsule.
Okay.
Out.
And then go in.
I did.
Well, even now the click and collect grocery shopper, that would have been brilliant too at the time.
Because that didn't exist 13 years ago, did it? No.
That wasn't invented
I'm like, did
yet.
we even have iPhones then?
No. And it was, I guess there might be some advantages that social media wasn't around either. So, but I think that I wasn't as aware and understood about, a network of support and people out there.
Yeah, this is the thing about social media. It's a blessing and a curse.
Absolutely.
Because you get so much wonderful information and you can connect with someone. You can be breastfeeding in the middle of the night and chatting with someone on the other side of the world who's also breastfeeding in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
You don't have that without social media. But also there's obviously a lot of bad that comes with social media.
Yeah.
How was your longer term recovery? So mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of it. How was it?
So
when did you acknowledge your prolapse?
So it wasn't until about 4 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was quite a while. And I still remember my 6-week checkup at my obstetrician, and I think it went for 3 minutes. Just and he was lovely and as caring as he could be, but it was, is everything okay? And I remember at the time too, at the birth, the midwives and the obstetricians, we kept saying how wonderful the birth was, that everyone just kept saying it was such a wonderful birth experience, because I think considering he was prem and I didn't need any intervention for the birth. So I had that in my mind that everything was fine, but I guess I just wasn't given that advice of prolapse, of being very mindful of not standing for long periods of time, all of that. And look, as a health professional, I should have known that as
but we
well.
often have our own blind spots.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I've even going back thinking, even knowing that, I still would have done everything that I did. Like I wanted to be the one making the bottles. I wanted to be on sterilizing. I had people around me, but it was just that anxious energy of I needed to be doing this for him. So that, from a physical point of view, once I had the prolapse assessed and had a great women's health physio, and I was able to start doing some exercises and treatment. Physically, I was fine. Probably emotionally, we tried to actually have our second child quite early, I think, because we just wanted to have children close together. But it just, again, wasn't the plan. It took about 18 months to get pregnant with my daughter second time. But I think, again, having that time to have more lived experience with my son and feeling more confident as a parent, that actually, again, was a
blessing.
A blessing in disguise.
Yeah. So, and with pregnancy with Liv, I was actually sick. So I developed POTS, which is like a neurocardiac. Yeah.
What is that?
So it's basically,
Your
blood
like,
pressure.
Out in the dark.
Basically my blood pressure would just drop into my boots and I would faint. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it took a little while for it to be diagnosed, and because everyone just thought I was just doing too much. I was back working and, I was busy and chasing after a 2-year-old. But it was happening, I'd be lying in bed and I'd wake up and I'd say to Mike, I feel like I'm going to faint. He's like, you're lying down. I said, I know, I'm not doing anything. I feel like I'm going to faint. So then again, gosh, I keep talking about all these blessings, but I wasn't able to be on my own with Jack in the late stages of my pregnancy. Yeah. So it was like a timetable in our family between my mother-in-law, my mum, my sisters. So I had company, and I loved that so much. I physically had someone with me all the time in the lead up to her birth. So I felt like then I could prepare more for postpartum. I had some time to cook and get organised and feel like but again, having that village of support of people around me
makes such a difference.
Huge. Yep.
How do you feel that your personal experience then influenced your work?
As an osteopath, yeah, greatly. I think in the past I would separate musculoskeletal health as separate to the person. I think I was very clinical in, I knew these conditions, I knew what to expect, I knew the right treatment approach. And as much as I loved working with people, I understood the pregnant body and I understood the postpartum body, but I definitely didn't appreciate and understand
the emotional body.
And spirit. Absolutely. And it wasn't until I treated a patient, this is when I was pregnant with Liv, and we had talked about she had experienced a lot of birth trauma, and I had spoken to her about that. Obviously, I was going to be needing to examine her pelvis and her lower back, and if she felt comfortable with me treating that area. And she was about 3 or 4 months postpartum. She said, yeah, it's all healed. It's fine. It's okay. It's not as sore as it was. And she was lying on the table. And as I started to examine, she just became overcome. She was started to get, I could see she was starting to sweat, and her face went all red, and she started to shake. And I said, is everything okay? Should I stop? And she was just having this visceral reaction with my hands on her pelvis of going back to that birth trauma. Yeah. And that was when I started to learn and understand more of how much we can internalize our emotions in our body. And I just didn't think that was a thing. And so now I find my treatments with patients, as much as I still rely on my physical treatment, we talk so much more, and I get to learn so much more about them. I spend a lot more time with questions and advice as well. And I might only do 1 or 2 techniques, and the rest of the time it's about them reconnecting with their body and understanding their body. And
so it's a more holistic approach now.
Yeah.
When did you start continual wear?
So we started that in COVID. Yes.
Right.
So
what was the inspiration behind it?
So because we were one of the only health professionals that were working at the time, and I just remember, there's only so many patients I can treat, and I was, having patients reach out, especially during pregnancy and postpartum, that were really struggling, and I just thought we need to do more to help support mothers. Like there's just not enough out there at all. And I remember, especially in postpartum, not many people were able to come in and have an appointment at all. And because they might have been investing a bit more of, I guess, in their health in pregnancy, like a lot of us, you get to postpartum and it just shifts to the baby completely. Yeah. And I remember having a conversation with the patient saying, do you have some compression garments? Like, can you just put something on until I see you next week just to help support? And she said, I just don't want to put them on. And she said, they're just so uncomfortable and I just don't feel good in them. And I said, okay, this might be a way that we can help. Maybe we can make compression comfortable. Like this is something we don't want women to feel like they need to endure and suffer through. Like let's try to balance comfort and compression. Let's just try to do something. But we didn't know how to make clothes. We didn't know what we were doing. So it was me and my colleague Ash, another amazing osteopath, like, what can we do? How can we get these made? And it was just serendipitous that one of my patients, Emma, who was pregnant at the time, she's an apparel specialist. And I asked her, I know, she walked in the door and I just asked her, I said, what do you think it would take to make some compression garments? And she said, I've been thinking of doing something like this.
Oh, how good.
So I was like, I think the universe is telling us something. Yeah. So then we started research, design, development, back and forth with having them tested. And so that took a long time. And then so we launched the end of last year with a pregnancy and a postpartum type
Amazing.
Oh, so both pregnancy and postpartum.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yes. Yep. So
I feel like you've been around for longer than that.
Oh, really? No, it's October.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
I
October
guess
last
that's
year.
nearly a year.
Nearly, yeah.
Still, it feels like
Yeah.
you've been around for longer.
Yeah.
Shall we wrap here?
Yeah. Next we're going to keep talking to you.
We want to keep. We want to hear
Next
everything
episode.
about your business, but we will chat more in the next episode. Thank you for sharing everything so far.
This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guest speakers. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and content here should not be taken as medical or professional advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any personal recommendations and medical care. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate based on the best available information at the time of recording, we welcome any comments, suggestions or feedback via our website contact form, home.com.au/contact. Names and details of personal experiences may have been changed to allow for anonymity and privacy. To join the conversation, join us on social media at Home Postpartum.